Hello, fellow scholars and purveyors of morbid curiosities alike. I'm Dr. Caleb, joined by the good doctor himself, Dr. Zach. And this is SCPod. Zach, how are you today?
Not too bad. Just taking care of some business. How about you?
Um, this is definitely not the worst trip I've had to take for the SCP Foundation.
I'm a little jealous.
Going to Romania has been pretty fun.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, and Site 61 is just, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever watch the movie Cabin in the
Yeah.
Woods? So you know that scene where all the monsters are in the little glass things?
Mm-hmm. It's like that.
That's exactly what being at one of these sites
Oh, that's
are.
so cool.
But instead it's like interdimensional beings that have probably given me psychological damage.
Yeah, that's kind of unavoidable. You're really in the Resident Evil 8 zone there.
Yeah, but it's still really cool nonetheless. So yeah, let's not beat around the metaphorical blood dragon bush here. And Zach, what are we covering today?
Well, Caleb, today we're talking about SCP-6283, Blood Brother. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-6283 is contained within a large biological entity containment unit within Site-61's Biological Studies Wing. The chamber is outfitted with high-powered ultraviolet and LED floodlights to allow for rapid pacification and incapacitation should the need arise. The chamber is to be cleaned once a month following feeding, removing all excess mucus and remains while SCP-6283 is dormant. SCP-6283 is to be fed one sus domesticus, or domesticated pig, per week. All instances of SCP-6283-1 are contained within a large cold storage unit located within the Biological Studies Wing. Instances of -1 are accessible for study purposes following approval from Dr. Belmont. Should instances of the -1s show any sign of waking, the unit is to be immediately locked down and MTF Psi-11, Nightlighters, are to be contacted. All additional materials, substances, and individuals related to SCP-6283 are kept within preservation chambers only accessible to members of Dr. Belmont's research team. Classifications of these objects are pending, following further investigation into connection of 6283. Should any information of person of interest 6283's whereabouts or whereabouts of any related individuals be found, is to be immediately reported to Dr. Belmont for review. Description: SCP-6283 is approximately 10-meter-long quadrupedal quasi-mammalian entity with forearms resembling bat wings, which possess 3 human-like fingers each, that 6283 uses for gripping and locomotion. SCP-6283 has long, extendable, fleshy neck, ending in a large humanoid head. The mouth of 6283 is filled with concentric rings of sharp teeth that face backwards down the throat. SCP-6283 appears to be troglobiotic, in morphology, meaning that it's suited to a low-light underground setting. Possessing translucent and pale skin, sensitivity to light and UV radiation, highly sensitive hearing, and lacking functional eyes and fur. SCP-6283's body is covered in a thick adhesive mucus that it constantly expels from its pores and mouth. This mucus acts as a highly effective reflector of UV rays and possesses a mild sedative effect when contacted. 6283 will utilize this mucus in nest-building behavior, coding the location it resides in thick webs of the substance. SCP-6283 is carnivorous and will rapidly stretch its mouth open up to 3 meters wide to envelop prey. Most creatures consumed by 6283 will be digested wholly. Humans, however, are expelled after an indeterminable amount of time through SCP-6283's mouth. Any human expelled this way will henceforth be referred to as SCP-682 SCP-6283-1. I have lizards on the brains, Dr. Caleb. This is description of 6283-1. SCP-6283-1 are humanoid entities that have physically altered by 6283. The -1s have their flesh transmuted into a form of sinewy pale biomatter, not resembling any known biological material. 6283-1s have a number of characteristics that have been exaggerated, such as sharpened teeth and large claws, while the other -1 facial features and sexual organs are no longer present. The entirety of the -1's body, except the mouth, is covered in thick pale skin that has been shown nearly impervious to damage. The internal structure of the -1 instances are completely devoid of functional organs except for the brain and heart, along with the nervous and circulatory systems. The -1s also produce the substance secreted by 6283, although only within saliva and within a subcutaneous layer across the entire body. All currently encountered instances of -1s have been completely immobile, curled into the fetal position, monitoring brain activity of the -1 instances to be in a state of perpetual REM sleep, and do not react to any form of stimuli. Addendum-A Discovery. On September 18th, 2012, the Foundation was made aware of potentially anomalous activities surrounding an isolated town in Romania. The town had an unusually high rate of deaths attributed to wildlife and natural causes, far above the regional average. An investigation initially led by the Romanian Federal Police was launched after a traveling tourist disappeared in the area, but was met with passive resistance from the uncooperative and isolated population. Following the disappearance of one of the officers under unusual circumstances, an embedded agent in the Romanian police force reported the area as a potential location of interest to the Foundation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Zek. That sounded like an absolute mouthful.
Oh, yeah.
I have a lot to discuss, but we're gonna save that. We're gonna save that. So let's go over the preliminary investigation. For those of you reading along at home, please turn in your badge and submit to the MTF. But also, you'll notice that there's a few of these red text things, and yeah, we're just gonna paraphrase them. It's easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the preliminary investigation occurred. I looked it up, and I made sure that the British time was not going to fuck us up this time. This is September 28th, 2012, by MTF Gamma 4, also known as the Green Stags. Investigators were disguised as environmental scientists with a cover story of investigating hazardous pollution and documenting the local species, with their headquarters being the local inn. The town seemed decrepit, with many houses and shops boarded up, and the few locals that were around being pretty antisocial and looking pretty ill. Investigation into deaths by animal attacks were met with resistance and further hostility when the threat of government intervention was brought up. The team eventually got into contact with a little girl who, when asked where everyone was, she replied, "Sleeping." When pressed, she expressed that they were not dead, just sleeping, including her older brother sleeping at, quote, the big house. And then there's some notable quotes by the little girl. When pressed further about what the big house was, she said, quote, "The one in the forest, where the monster was born. The doctor says the monster makes us better. We're sick, so we all need to get better," end quote. And then, when asked further about the people sleeping and the brother and things like that, she said, quote, "Don't worry, Mama said he'll wake up soon. Mama said they all will, when the sun comes up," end quote. A woman then ushered the girl away from the group, and the MTF retired back to the inn. So, yeah, some weird stuff going on in this town so far. But it continues to get weirder. Moving on to the Manor investigation. The Manor investigation happened the day after. That would be September 29th, 2012, by MTF Gamma 4, also known as the Green Stags. once again. After exploring the woods, the team comes across the partially collapsed manor. The team finds no record of activity and breach the front door. The inside was overgrown and have no signs of recent activity, but they do find a locked door leading to the basement. Inside the basement was a makeshift laboratory filled with scientific instruments, large vats of an unidentified viscous yellow liquid, a few organic mounds in glass chambers, and an operating table with a single specimen of SCP-6283-1 that appears deceased. On a nearby table, a journal was found belonging to a Dr. Malgrave. The contents were written in English. And for this, I'm just going to read these verbatim because lore. So, June 21st, 2010. By the way, not written in British time, which is interesting.
Suspicious.
Sus domesticus. I'm cutting that.
No, you leave that the fuck in with the silence.
So June 21st, 2010. The lady has bestowed a new project upon me. She tells me that this is one of the utmost importance to the master himself, and that failure was unacceptable. What an opportunity this is, to finally have my talents recognized by the master, and not be left in obscurity by this wretched flesh-worshipping collective. I have been provided with a number of human embryos, and have been tasked with achieving a new form of evolution to guide mankind into the future. What I am to create is a, quote, vessel for change. For humanity to reach a new stage to face the oncoming daybreak and not falter in the face of the great enemy. It will be our guiding light to the future, or so they say. Yet I have been given complete freedom to achieve this goal at my own volition. Despite the collective being a gathering of old world zealots, I'm excited to begin. The prospects for such a revolutionary achievement are endless, and this town will serve as an excellent starting ground for my exploits. Next journal entry is December 14th, 2010. The beginnings of the project, though slow, have shown great promise. I have spliced several separate creatures into the embryos provided in order to create a variety of effects, including a growth accelerant to hasten the pace of maturity. However, the embryos have consistently become unstable in their growth, often leading to high levels of cancerous lesions and premature deaths. A number of these subjects have provided new methods for further exploration. The mortality rate of the young may be quite high, but the lady continues to provide new research subjects for continued experimentation. She tells me that these creatures are the children of the master himself, so I'm told. Even if they are to perish in service of this research, I am to treat them with utmost respect. Regardless of my personal thoughts on the matter of sentimentality, I have nonetheless buried the corpses in the nearby churchyard. A number of longer-lived and promising candidates have begun to produce an ichor that protects them from the light, although it has proven to be sporadic and ineffective in current iterations. I have lost 2 candidates thus far to immolation despite the ichor's presence. I must find a way to make the results more stable. The artificial nature and exposure of the growing tubes is what I suspect to be creating these unstable results. Perhaps a more natural approach is required? Next journal entry is April 20th, 2011. Through much trial and error, I have managed to create a temporary casing in order to assist with the growth of the children to adulthood. This has resulted in a number of far more stable results with significantly less premature deaths, as suspected. While the natural casing is definitely more effective, it would seem that the addition of blood seems to be the key. Casings filled with a mixture of my elixirs and a healthy quantity of human blood have resulted in accelerated growth and far more viable subjects. Obtaining the blood was, of course, one concern, but the location of my lab has proven to be highly advantageous. The nearby villagers are a superstitious lot and easily manipulated. I have already begun to sow the seeds of folklore into their number along with some teachings of the collective. Already they have begun to shut themselves off at night, leaving offerings of individuals too sick or elderly to be, quote, taken care of. I almost pity them. One candidate of the most recent array of mature subjects has shown immense promise with very minimal drawbacks. The Iker is still not enough to protect the subject from the light entirely, but the stability of production and the amount produced are already far beyond what earlier tests have created. However, I am beginning to run low on supplies of embryos and various transformative elixirs. The lady, while pleased with my results, grows impatient with the slow rate of success. Art cannot be rushed. I can only hope the prime subject is as valuable as he seems. Next journal entry is December 20th, 2011. Eureka! It would seem I have been going about this project in the wrong way. The prime subject, of which I have taken to calling the Sun, has grown immensely over these past few months and has begun to display rather intense hunting behavior. It seems to have imprinted upon me as well, and can learn basic commands given enough time. Excellent for control as it continues to grow. Yet, while the subject is indeed a beautiful success in its own right, he still possessed flaws that would take years to remove from the bloodline, such as relatively low intelligence and mediocre protection from immolation. This would not pass with the lady, nor the other rulers of the collective. But, as fate would have it, the Sun is not the next step in evolution, but the key to it. Out of necessity for continued growth, the local offering of an elderly woman has been given entirely to the subject for feeding as opposed to the usual liquid diet of blood. Unsure of what to expect from this unprecedented experiment, I had contained them in the lower levels for observation. Several hours after consumption, however, the subject eventually regurgitated the woman altered and anew. The woman had been utterly transformed. All outward features denoting individuality has vanished. The skin was now pallid and would not break even when exposed to medical-grade equipment requiring specialized tool to perform a vivisection. The mouth was pronounced and predatory, with the internal structure of the body consisting only of a beating heart and a large active brain. Most excitedly, however, the skin possessed a lower layer of the ichor in such a volume and density that it protected the creature entirely from immolation. The creature, while completely dormant, is exactly the result I have been attempting to achieve all these months. I must create more. I simply must. After I share my result with the lady, my resources will no doubt increase tenfold in order to create more like the Sun. No doubt the master will praise me for my efforts as well. The next journal entry is January 3rd, 2012. Over the past few months, I have taken more and more of the populace of the nearby village for conversion into the sleepers. The Sun has grown immense and shows no signs of ceasing growth at any time in the near future. Recreating the success of the Sun has been difficult, with most children being insufficient or perishing in the process. The production of sleepers has been almost perfectly replicable, with the added bonus of nourishing the Sun of his required intake of blood. Due to the added need for space, however, I have moved all sleepers and the Sun himself to the church in the village for safekeeping, while my research will continue here. I have reported my success to the lady some months back, who seems incredibly satisfied with my work. While the sleepers are fully inactive, she assures me that that is a trifling concern. I am unsure what to make of this, but she has promised me the funds and resources to further expanding my work, even my personal projects. The villagers have been of continued value to my work, now cultivating a form of religious beliefs to the necessity of the sacrifices to help save their people. I have spread the notion that they are afflicted by an illness that will burst forth when the great enemy frees itself from the shackles of the Sun, another collective belief that serves well to spread paranoia. I have also introduced a somewhat meager strain of bacteria to the local drinking water, to help further the illusion. It will not interfere with my studies nor my volume of viable stock, but the effects are quite convincing. In addition, it would seem that the people have begun seeing the Sun as a form of savior, which has fully placed them under my sway. Their numbers are limited, however. I may have to find a new source of feeding stock and subjects soon if they continue to dwindle. And the final journal entry is February 12th, 2012. Damnation! The lady has informed me that my work here is at risk. Certain interested parties have grown aware of my activity and have been poking around where they are not welcome. She tells me that it is only a matter of time before word reaches the Crusaders and they worm their way back into this place. I have begun to collect as much as I can for evacuation, but a large number of the materials must remain behind. This includes the sun and their sleepers. Their transportation will require time and effort that could not be hidden from prying eyes. I must consider them lost. I can only pray he continues to survive into the future. Perhaps we'll see another again someday. I have warned the villagers of the Crusaders coming here and distributed my solutions among their populace. Convince them that it was a form of medicine. No doubt the results will be unpredictable and violent, but they will do their part to hold the Crusaders at bay. I must go now. Let them have their scraps. Nothing can stop what has been achieved here. So after that amount of hoopla...
That is a long read.
After reviewing the journal... the team returned to the inn to prepare to investigate the church mentioned in the journal. Locals were notably more aggressive and confrontational. Locals were noted as being more gaunt and sickly with their hair falling out. Many were seen watching the team from outside the inn and appearing to have sharper teeth and elongated fingers into claws. Suspecting hostile intent, reinforcements were called.
All right, and back over to me, leading up to, after the incident and investigation at the manor, is when we have an action report filed for 6283. After the contact with the investigation team was lost, a further investigation and extraction team was organized to help contain the situation and subdue any potential hostile elements within the township. Enter in from stage left, Mobile Task Force Epsilon 6, our good friends, the Village Idiots, who were sent in not only as a fully armed squadron of agents, but as a backup with a reserve of 2 squadrons and in standby air support. The team was inserted into a nearby field and then advanced upon the town.
Alright, and whoosh, right back to me. So, action report. This occurred on September 30th, 2012, by MTF Epsilon 6, also known as the Village Idiots, our good friends from an earlier SCP. So, the MTF had an assault force of 26, with an advanced squadron of 6 armed agents, with 2 supplementary groups of 10, and an attack helicopter. The goal was to go into the town and find the MIA agents of MTF Gamma 4 and extract. If the locals are hostile, the team is to fortify and await supplementary groups to assist. If anomalous activity occurs, the whole town is to be treated as hazardous and extract immediately, and containment procedures enacted. All subjects are to be subdued or terminated. Begin the report. For those of you reading along at home, this has a bunch of timings to it, and it is my executive decision that the timing doesn't matter, so I will not be going over those.
In the same way that time doesn't really matter.
Exactly. We're dealing with an extra-dimensional cult of meat puppets. I don't think knowing that something occurs at 21, 23, 22 really matters.
Yeah.
So, the inn is completely destroyed, with gore and viscera leading from the front door to the room the investigation team was staying in. Large claw marks are spread through the path, and the room ransacked with equipment missing. There is no sign of the investigation team. A villager enters the town square and is ordered to stop. They appear gaunt, pale-skinned, with sharp teeth and large clawed hands, and covered in blood. The villager throws the severed head of one of the investigators to the MTF. The villager then shrieks, and multiple other individuals enter the square, also covered in blood, and begin sprinting at the team. The team starts firing at them, stand their ground, whatever. And they call for backup, and it'll be there in 5 minutes. The helicopter arrives and suppresses the horde. An unknown object hits the helicopter and it spins out of control and crashes. The object is revealed to be SCP-6283, who gets on its hind legs, stretches its wings, and lets out a screech. The agents retreat into the inn, where the creature grabs one agent, throws him into a nearby building, and snatches the other with its mucus and is torn apart. SCP-6283 collapses the front of the inn and stairway in pursuit, but is unable to fit upstairs. The creature, however, is able to grab another agent from the outside of the inn and properly eviscerates them, while the last 2 agents huddle in a room. One of the agents lets out a pained groan where it can be heard the creature rushes to their position and it extends its neck inside, coming within a meter of the agents. The creature is smacked by an explosive round when the supplementary team arrives. Most provide suppressing fire while pelting it with more explosive rounds. 6283 is hit 3 more times with explosive rounds, finally falling into a building and fire, and then it gets out of the fire and then collapses in the middle of the town. Agents deploy electrical pacification devices and thankfully incapacitate it. The town is labeled an anomalous hazard zone, and seek and destroy teams are brought in to locate other villagers and subdue or destroy them. And then finally, well, I shouldn't say finally, there's still more. There is the cleanup report, which, following containment of 6283, cleanup teams were sent to get all relevant documents, specimens, and subjects around town for transport to Site 61. All villagers were infected by some form of concentrated biological mutagen, identical to those found in vats at the manor. Research is still ongoing, but it seems to manifest as a physical mutation, heightened aggression, and lowered intelligence. Infected individuals also possess a large amount of cancerous growths and other health issues. The liquid is labeled as SCP-6283-2, with the infected people being SCP-6283-3. Yeah, so we got all the way to a -3 on this one. That's crazy.
As a minor
The churchyard was...
as a minor nitpick, one thing that irritates me is when other researchers are a little too liberal with going nuts on the dashes. It makes it really hard to read.
Yeah. The churchyard was found on the outer edge of the town. Inside were 43 total -1 specimens, several mutated villagers, and sentimental items such as toys and jewelry. The internal structure was coated in the mucus of SCP-6283, and in the center of the church lay an altar with a sealed letter made out of human skin. All items were transported to Site 61 under the care of Dr. Belmont. The mission was reported a success, and a cover story of a highly virulent disease wiping out the town was released. The town is placed under quarantine while Dr. Malgrave is designated POI 6283, where investigation into his whereabouts is ongoing.
As part of Addendum B, as Dr. Caleb mentioned, during the cleanup, a sealed letter crafted from human skin was located within the church among a number of certain sentimental objects. The ink of the letter was composed of human blood and written in an archaic form of Romanian and sealed with a wax bearing a symbol representing some sort of beast, which I speculate is probably Yaldabaoth. The symbol has been found among scriptures of the Nalka faith, or Sarkism, within the Foundation's possession. The full letter has been translated and is available here attached to the document.
I'm not going to try a Romanian accent. I thought about it.
Yeah, choose life.
And I decided not to. My child, I write this now so that someday you may see what purpose I have planned for you. You are young, naive, and afraid. The world around you is not the one you were meant for. No, the world you are here to thrive within is one of fire, sunlight, and writhing flesh. But do not fear, for when the time is near and you come of age, mankind will flock to you as their guardian angel. And when they do, they will be severed from the great enemy's grasp and be ready to stand against the tide of unending destruction. For when the meek hide away, you must not. When the world falls to malignant light, you will not. And finally, even when day breaks, you shall not. I love you, my son. That is by Count, Karcist, and Father. Zach, will you say that name? That is way too much for me to say.
Lord Vladislaus Dracula.
Thank you, thank you. And that's 6283. That is a whole mouthful of shit.
That is a whole mouthful of good shit.
Yeah. There's some real We've been saying this a lot recently, but there's some Raccoon City behavior going on here.
Yeah, like it's a cross between like Raccoon City and God, at least one of the Silent Hill games.
It's kind of interesting because we have another proto-Sarkic cult on our hands. Although I don't know, this is interesting because I got the feeling that a lot of the proto-Sarkic things that were going on were there since like the very beginning. It strikes me as very old and everything like that. Where this is a relatively new. I mean, the cult formed in 2010 when this Dr. Malgrave kind of started assimilating the local townspeople.
Yeah, but I also wonder about like the influences, like with the lady and the group she represents coming in. We don't know necessarily how old that group is.
That's true.
And so I have a feeling that because Romania at one point was under the sphere of influence of Russia, which is what I presume Sarkicism. Sarkism has its roots, as seen with most proto-Sarkic groups.
At least proto-Sarkicism.
Well, yeah. I mean, the proto-Sarkics came first, and so, or at least a direct lineage from the original Sarkists, and so I think that there's something there. But it almost like, at least with the goal of the group, being more bioengineering than anything else. At least based off this article, that their group, maybe their goals are a little different. So maybe we're dealing with like a break off group of proto-Sarkism.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I like that you brought up the lady because it calls directly back to Our Land, Our Bondage with that angel.
Yeah, and like I think there's
and the priestess.
Yeah, I think there's a direct call out of an angel here as well, or at least alluding to the entity of 6283 as an angel of sorts.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something there, or at least it's a continuing motif of referring to these larger, lack of a better term, legendary creatures being seen as angelic as opposed to, say, monstrous or more common.
Right. I think it's also really interesting that, the SCP-6283 is the dragon, the bat boy, and most of the he's not there for very long in this article. It's a lot of the background of it and everything, but even in the action report, like he kills a couple dudes and then gets pelted and electrocuted.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking etymologically, Dracula means son of the dragon because going back in history, say Vlad Dracula, the famous count, was son of his father who had the name Dracul because he was a member of the Order of the Dragon, which was a holy order of knights and warriors and nobles in the Holy Roman Empire. And so this being more or less a mammalian dragon-like creature is a interesting bioengineered take on the family name.
Yeah, no, that is a really good point, and one I didn't know. So
that's what I'm here for.
It is also interesting because you don't minus the Lord calling himself a Karcist, and then the Seal of Yaldabaoth, and like a few mentions of like sickliness from the townsfolk. There's not that much that ties this directly to Sarkicism.
No.
It almost feels like kind of this offshoot of it. Like it's just like, oops, all Sarkicism. Where everything else that we've talked about has been very directly related and very much like Sarkicism through and through.
Yeah. I brought this up in the Our Land, Our Bondage episode, that there was also another entity or phenomena in Romania that I was reminded of. And this one just as well reminds me of it because it's also in Romania. And I'm thinking of, not to create another Tyler situation, but of 2191, which is a phenomena in Romania where there is a whole race of underground bat people that is connected to a form of bioengineered Sarkism.
Interesting.
And so just kind of put a pin in that. We might want to do another full episode on that eventually, but there are other Sarkic entities in Romania that are following the same idea as this one that I think would be worth exploring at another point. But kind of circling back on what you said is that this group is definitely more interested in staying secret while also trying to be active, and so weirdly they end up having like more security concerns like the Neo-Sarkics, but still clinging to the trappings of Proto-Sarkics.
Yeah. It's also interesting because during Unfinished Ritual, part of Operation Citra Acra was they talked about how there were another anomaly occurring very similar to an Unfinished Ritual in Romania. So it seems to be that Romania is maybe this like hotspot for it currently in modern day. As this is a very fairly recent SCP. I mean, we're in the year of our Lord 2024, and talking about recency being 2012. But compared to some of the other things, I mean, Siege of Gyros is like 1,000,000 years old,
right?
And you have with Sarkicism, you have all these like really old dudes or really old guys that are running everything. So for this to be so recent, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it ends up being like a neat middle ground between the two traditions.
Right.
And I kind of wonder what else is going on in like rural Romania at this point between 6283, which we found, and 2191, and then whatever the hell Citra Acra was referring to.
Right. The final thing I have for this is, can we talk about how fitting the names are for this entry? Like, I don't know, like somebody was working behind the scenes to give these guys just the best names for something like this.
Oh,
you have Dr. Malgrave.
Yeah, you have Dr. Badgrave creating evil monsters in a basement in rural Romania, and the guy heading up the research team on our side is Dr. Belmont, who is
dealing with vampires.
Literally dealing with a guy named Dracula. No notes. Whoever pulled strings to make that happen and get that doctor on this assignment, I love you.
Yeah. It's almost like it was created this way, like maybe the Foundation went in and like stole a baby and like raised him to be a Dr. Belmont. Do you think his first name's Trevor?
I don't know. I mean, there are like a billion Belmonts. That could be like who else is there? Because Trevor's in the show, and then
you have Simon, you have Richter.
Yeah, Simon Richter. It shows you how much I know about the fucking Castlevania series. But yeah, I appreciated that.
I mean, do you think that it could also just be a thing that if you're doing this kind of shit in Romania, your name just morphs into this, like it's just your job?
It could also be a pseudonym like that, like you're kind of alluding to, is that like it's like a pen name.
Yeah.
Like if you ever deal with an SCP dealing with Dracula, you're just now Dr. Belmont.
Exactly. And I've met Dr. Belmont in my time here at Site 61. And as far as I can tell, he is not a medieval vampire hunter. He's just a guy being a dude.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
He drinks Bud Light.
Maybe he's not a good person after all.
It's kind of hard to get some of the like domestic beer here. It very much you kind of work with what you get.
Well, I mean, domestic beer there isn't.
That's true. Speaking of domestic things, any notes that you got, Dr. Zach, about Flying Bat Boy here?
No, not really, because with 6283 itself, this is definitely a Euclid entry if there ever was one. Like, we don't know necessarily how the biology of this thing works, because no one's been willing to kill it and dissect it. And so we just kind of have it in a box. We can't really do anything with its progeny, for lack of a better word, except for freeze them and put them in a box. And so our entire program with this entity is to put it in a box and hope it never gets out. And so what's there to say beyond that, other than we're pretty sure there's other things in Romania that we should be concerned with. And that maybe we would learn a lot more if we did some autopsies.
That's very true. It's yeah, I mean, if there's one thing the SCP Foundation is good at, it's putting things in boxes.
It's kind of our thing.
I guess that we do have to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. And I promise, Hat Guy, if you're listening or just out of earshot, it'll be quick.
No, don't do it, Caleb.
When day breaks is referenced multiple times, and it's been a while since I've gone through the 001 proposals, but I would be interested to see if there's some kind of Sarkic link or something, because they do kind of hit it right on the nose talking about when day breaks.
Yeah, but that deals with questions of alternate timelines and realities and certain divergences happening, because the entity in that case is the sun, or at least the light of the sun. And so if when day breaks happen, or that particular 001 proposal was true, it would already be happening, and we would have an answer, or at least there would be an answer, and we would all be goo.
That's true. I just wonder if, like, since Sarkicism is at least proposed to be like multiple timeline spanning and stuff like that, if like maybe they've seen this and like maybe that's what the final goal of Sarkicism is to like ready the human race for this 001 proposal. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I thought it was interesting that it was brought up so many times in the article.
Yeah. I think you should put a pin in that, and we can do a circle back on it when we do our roundup for Sarkism.
Yeah.
Just because the idea of Sarkism, I think the more we talk about Sarkism, the idea of it having an overarching goal as a faith is a interesting idea, because all the groups seem to be somewhat disparate in their goals, at least from the outside.
Exactly.
But that could also just be maybe they're hiding their tracks too well.
Well, and I do think that I think you have the proto-Sarkics that are working towards the ultimate goal of Sarkicism, and you have the neo-Sarkics that are just using the meat magic for their own gain.
Yeah.
Very infantile in their beliefs and stuff like that. Because I don't think things like the Human Capital Convention are really working towards whatever the final goal of Sarkicism is. That being said, like you said, we'll do that during the roundup. That should be a really interesting episode. Yeah, do you have anything else you want to say about the Blood Brother here?
No, not really.
I think his name's a little weird.
Yeah, but it fits with the theme, because there's a lot of talk about like family, fathers, and sons. Like, it's literally called the Sun.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah, that's 6283. It's a weird one, but I don't know. I think I'm better for researching it and reading all those fucking journal entries.
It's a neat monster. It's a good story, but it's a very Euclid entry.
It's also really interesting, and this will be my final thing I say about this, but through Sarkicism this season, we've dealt with a lot of ideas and situations being SCPs. This is like the first true blue like monster that we've come across this season.
Yeah, like this is like we haven't had like a full on like dedicated monster entry. Like we've had monsters in Sarkics with like all the weird giant ogre things, but like we haven't had one of them be like the focus of a monster.
Right. So I don't know. I appreciate him for that. In the meantime, Zach, show yourself.
So you can find me over at my casual writing blog, where I share a lot of my short fiction, over at makeawritingcheck.blogspot.com, or on YouTube as Roll for Writing Presents. Additionally, I am just publishing my first book, which will be available October 7th, called Tales from Port Astor. So far, my big gets for distributors have been Barnes & Noble and Apple Books. So look for those there. Or if you're across the seas in Europe, you may find me on other venues as well.
Awesome. I'm clapping for the release of this first book, first of many. And yeah, definitely SCPod will be promoting it as much as possible. And go buy the book. Just go buy the book.
Please buy the book.
You can find me at any of the links that you can use to buy Zach's book. I will be there. I will be sharing the screen with you. I will not be there physically, but I will be there in spirit. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Calica1738, and on Twitch at Calica Plays, and YouTube at Calica, where I do ranked tier lists and just overall just be a goofy dude who likes to share opinions on just random shit. Or you can follow the podcast, which is where you'll get the most amount of Caleb. And that you can follow on Twitter at scpod_cast. You can follow us on Instagram at scpod.cast. We're available both on Spotify and YouTube. Not quite as far reaching as Zach. We are not at barnesandnoble.com. Please remember to like, rate, follow, comment, subscribe. Dislike if you hate us. Anything like that. It really does push the algorithm to push us out to people that might also like the episode or like what we're doing here. And please, 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 final thing I will say is please go pre-order Zach's book. He put a lot of work into it, and this is how I'm going to make $1 million. In the meantime, Zach, what are we covering next week?
Next week we are covering SCP-610, The Flesh That Hates.
Oh, we're covering a big one. Okay, well, look forward to that. That's my favorite SCP, so I'm super excited. That also means, Zach, I'm coming home.
You're going to Russia.
Oh, I'm not on site for this one. My post orders say I'm back in the podcast room next week.
No, you're going to Russia. It's been arranged.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess look forward to that. That's going to be a really fun episode, or not. Could also not be fun. Zach, what is your advice for the other one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eaters?
Beware Sir Michael Cavendish and his touch in the guise of the King of Serpents.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.